Welcome to my next presentation for the 2020 Blackboard European Teaching and Learning Conference. This one is called Better Blackboard Help, where your users need it and when they want it. My name's Matthew Deeprose. I'm the VLE manager at the University of Southampton. Now, just a few words before I begin. This presentation, I'm running out of time. It's just a few days before I'm meant to be giving the live version of this presentation, and I really wanted to have the full version all ready to go so that hopefully you'll be inspired by my 10-minute kind of trailer that I'll be delivering on Thursday the 28th of May 2020, that you'll be really wanting to dive in and have a look at this presentation. And it turned out to be quite a lot more work than I anticipated to prepare this presentation and really to put in all of the materials that I wanted to have in there. I'm not sure about you, but when I go to a conference and if I hear about something amazing another institution has done, I'm often really disappointed if they have not shared examples of, for example, their code or their processes or how they went about doing something amazing that they did. Just telling us, oh, I did something great. I want to know, can I do it too? And this presentation is it's a bit of a seminar, a lecture, but also a training course. And although there is a lot of material in here, I hope again that it will prove useful to you and that you'll be able to join me on this same journey of providing better help within Blackboard, right where people would want to see it, when they'll need to see it. And like all great presentations, this one has been finished in a rush, so there might be a few parts which don't quite flow together, so do bear with me. Once again, I'm recording this in my current office arrangement, and hopefully this time the recording of the voice will be a bit better. I've got a pair of headphones just around my neck here, just resting with a built-in microphone. Last week we saw Lillian Soon's fantastic presentation about accessibility, and I noticed that Lillian was wearing a set of headphones around her neck so the microphone could pick up the voice better, and that's what I'm doing today. So hopefully it does not look too weird, and hopefully the audio quality of this presentation will be a lot better than it was for last week's presentation. And because this is quite long, I thought I'd try and tell you exactly what this presentation is going to be about now, because the rest of it is really going to be going through detail, looking at the full aspects of sharing with you how I went about what we did here and how you can do it too. So kind of in a nutshell, this is the story about how I made inline contextual relevant help for Blackboard users within Blackboard that directed them to our own support site. And as an example, this is how it can look, with a help box appearing within the Blackboard interface with links going to our own support site. And I have done this just using a bit of HTML, really, really simple, and hopefully you will feel inspired and equipped to do the same thing. When we implemented this method of adding help within Blackboard, we found that during the start of term last year, so kind of October, from Freshers Week into the first 4 weeks of teaching, that our support site had an increased level of engagement of greater than 1,000%. And just to give you a preview, this is comparing Freshers Week to the 4th week of teaching 2018 to 2019, and accesses to our support site that were referred from our Blackboard environment, blackboard.sotten. So that is a tremendous increase. And I'm going to be showing you how you can do exactly this approach, how you can replicate what I have done using free software. And just as an example, this is a slide from a little bit later on. I'm going to be using a tool called JSHack or JSHack, and I'm using a text editor such as Notepad++ and Blackboard. And this is all that you need. You don't need anything else to be able to do this, and I really hope that you will want to have a go, because I've got lots of resources that I'm going to be sharing with you. Just a quick preview here of what that's going to look like. That was kind of like the preview that hopefully whets your appetite to want to stay to see the rest of this presentation. I've got 233 slides to go through with you, and what I'm going to be covering is kind of the background, how I came to make what I'm calling Better Blackboard Help, how you can make it too, with a lot of step-by-step guides, some other benefits of this approach, what the impact has been, and possible next steps. So let's take a look. Now, everything that I'm referring to today is online. I've got this website, go.sutton.ac.uk/bb. The address is at the bottom of every slide within this presentation. And this year's TLC, I'm giving 2 presentations. Just recently delivered a Bluffer's Guide to Blackboard Theme Accessibility, and right now this is the one about Better Blackboard Help. And just like with my accessibility presentation, I've got lots of materials on this site that will help you to get started very quickly. I've really spent a lot of time getting this together for you, so I really hope that is going to be of benefit for you. Now, my name's Matthew Deeprose, as I said earlier. On Twitter, I am @VLEGuru. I've been working with Blackboard at Southampton for almost 20 years now. I was a Blackboard MVP and just recently become a member of the Community Leadership Circle. I've done a few presentations at the Teaching and Learning Conference before, and this year I'm giving 2, which I've already mentioned. Now, I say I'm from Southampton, and often if I say Southampton, some people kind of know roughly where it is, but not everyone, and particularly when I talk with European colleagues, I'm always trying to explain, or international colleagues, I'm always looking to explain where exactly it is. And so this is as far as I could zoom out on Google Maps where you could still have an idea of where it would be, and right at the bottom of the UK, straight down the middle on the south coast. And as we zoom in to look at Europe, you can see we're getting a bit closer, closer still, and here we are. The city is circled in a red outline, and one of my top facts about Southampton is that the New Forest, which is the green blotch on the left of the map of Southampton, is one of the largest remaining tracts of unenclosed pasture land, heathland and forest in southern England. If you've not been there, it is quite a magical place. Find many animals just roaming around freely. It's a good place to spend a day out, to go camping. I recommend it. So, what's in scope of this presentation? Well, we're talking about the Blackboard Original Experience. Now, this could be locally hosted, managed hosting, or on SaaS. But what's out of scope is Blackboard Ultra and also the Ultra-based navigation. Even if you're using that with Original Experience courses, I've heard that this technique will not be possible if you're using Ultra-based navigation. I'm now going to tell you kind of a bit of background about why I ended up getting to this place where I made what I'm calling Better Blackboard Help. So I'm going to give you a bit of gentle background. Now, of course, right now, as is shown quite clearly by the fact that I'm presenting to you from a spare room at home, we're not at the conference in Amsterdam, more's the pity, and because of the situation that we're in currently with such a rapid move to online teaching, with everyone kind of locked away indoors, not able to get out. And our staff and students are really relying on Blackboard now more than ever. In the past, we would often have a more blended approach. At Southampton, we do a few online courses, but really not a great deal of them. It's been much more a blended approach till now, of course. So we really want to maximize the efficiency and effective use of our Blackboard environment. And whenever staff or students contact us centrally with questions, they raise a support ticket, that's time effectively being wasted where they're not making the best use of the tool. They're waiting to hear from us either to fix something or to explain something. And I've always been wanting to improve that support experience to really maximize the amount of time that people are using our virtual learning environment without stopping effectively, without finding that they can't find the answer or things aren't just quite working for them and they need to contact us, which obviously will put a delay onto them. And a typical support cycle might be that someone, a member of staff or a student, just using Blackboard, and then they experience a problem or something they're not sure about, and they might look for help, which might be on through a search engine like Google, our local support site if we're lucky, or another support site from another university, Blackboard's own help. They might phone a friend, they might turn around and talk to their colleague, or they might just guess. But eventually, if they're still not getting anywhere, then they're going to probably contact central support, and then they have to wait for an answer, and then they get the answer, but they still might not be able to start using Blackboard right away. I often hear, I'd put aside my Sunday afternoon to get my course ready for the new academic year. I hit a problem and I'm not going to have time again until next weekend, because our staff, just like our students, are incredibly busy, and which is why we really want to reduce the amount of time spent on this support cycle. Something that I am sure lots of you have already done is looking at improving your own processes within your within your department, if you're in central IT or learning support department. So for example, we have ITIL, and so we're looking at improving our ticket handling, first line fixes, the knowledge base. We also do a lot of Lean Six Sigma, looking at process improvement, and we have service level agreements, service level targets. So we do emphasize a lot of improving our processes, but wouldn't it be better if perhaps users were able to, if they hit a problem, were just able to sort that problem out for themselves? Or an even better approach is that they just use the VLE and they never have any problems. But I'm not sure that that's particularly realistic, because we have other services that we implement into Blackboard, Turnitin, Panopto. We've got central data sending from our Banner student record system into Blackboard. And as usage becomes more sophisticated and people are looking to do more sophisticated uses of Blackboard, then it's very likely that they are going to have questions and need to be looking for answers. It's not necessarily going to be super intuitive the whole time. Right now, I'm thinking the best case scenario is cutting out the middleman, that if, as in central support, making a phone call, waiting for an answer, waiting to be able to get going, of helping our users that when they experience a problem or difficulty, or they want to know how to use a feature, perhaps something they've not used before, that they can get the relevant help straight away to get going, and so that they're not then paused while they're waiting for a response from, say, a learning technologist or technical support assistant, something like that. I'm going to give you a bit more background about that's kind of slightly big picture. How does it actually look at Southampton? So Blackboard is very heavily relied on. Of course, support ticket volumes are slowly decreasing. Not by much, but the trend is downwards. But rather than looking at the total number of tickets that are raised in any given year, what I find more helpful to me, and also to explain when someone, say within my department, which is central IT, says, well, you get a lot of tickets about Blackboard, is it really not very good? And say, well, we've got 24,000 students using it each month, 7,000 staff using it each month. What about if we consider the proportion of active users who have to raise a ticket, and because of historical issues where we've changed ticket management systems, I can't look back at all of the data in quite the way I want to. But what I do know is how many tickets were sent to the second line support group, which I belong to. So once you phone the service desk, if they can't fix it, they will then send you to the team I work in. If we can't fix it, we'll contact the third line, being Blackboard support themselves. So the average percentage of users who are active in a certain month, and averaged a year's worth of that data, we were finding that on average, say if you look at the 2013 figure, we had 0.5% of active users raised a ticket. And thanks to various improvements that we've been putting in place the whole time, we're always putting in improvements to our environment, the percentage has been shrinking. But last year, it really only reduced by 2%. So I'm thinking maybe it's plateaued. So I was already looking for something new, something better that I could do that might help to reduce tickets. Also, when we look at which groups raise tickets, the large blue part of this pie chart is the staff. The next quadrant, the green, that's kind of generic accounts like school office accounts, which are kind of shared between, say, a group within an office. Those are predominantly the largest group of people that are raising tickets, but they are also a smaller group. Students are a much larger group but raise far fewer tickets. But staff make much more advanced use of Blackboard, of course. And the types of questions that they're asking, there's some three popular ones, like how do I, which is kind of what I classify as tickets where someone is either asking how to do something, or they're trying to do something and they're not doing it right, or things just aren't quite working and they just need some kind of assistance on how to use the product Blackboard. That's one of our highest areas of causes for someone raising a support ticket. You probably are familiar with my course is unavailable. It says unavailable. I thought it would be available automatically, but it's not available. What do I do? That's kind of still quite a common reason for people to be contacting us. Now we have a wonderful website called elearn.southampton.ac.uk, and this website has lots of our step-by-step guides, and we really resisted keeping this locked away in an intranet or an internal knowledge base or SharePoint. We wanted it to be open to the world, and you might have used it yourself because almost 1,400 different academic institutions across 32 countries have accessed our eLearn support site, 368 of whom were in the UK. And you can see some of the details of the volumes of guidance that we have built up over time. And when we look at how many, the usage of that site, and I particularly find myself referring back to Freshers Week, Week 0 of start of Semester 1, up to the first 4 weeks of term. Those are traditionally quite peak areas in terms of support. Often we'll have staff who've just rolled over their courses and got things ready, and then the kind of issues like courses being unavailable, I can't log in, I can't do various things in Blackboard. These are the key sorts of times. And in 2018, and I'll be referring back to these figures a bit later, in 2018 we had an average of between 500 and 1,500 page views per day over that kind of, this is what I consider to be quite a peak time of support. There are other times as well, of course, like hand-in times, beginning of semester 2, end of semester 2, exam revisions, exams, summer schools. So we are always busy, but the start of term is often quite a peak and a good comparator across multiple years. But we spent all this time building this eLearn support site, but why don't we use Blackboard's own help pages? This is a screenshot of how it looks. Nice and simple, nice graphics, very friendly. So why don't we use that? Why do we put all of the effort in maintaining our own resources? Well, of course, we also use other tools like Turnitin and Panopto. So we want to be able to have one place where our users can see everything. I should say, since I've mentioned this a few times, it's also in the title of my presentation, I often used to say customers for our staff and students, but staff have often said, well, we don't have an opportunity to shop around for support. We can only get support from you, so we're not really customers. So I've started, although I thought that considering people as customers was kind of a better way of making sure that the language was more customer focused, but lately I've changed a bit more to using the phrase users for people who use our site. But I'm sure if this was a real conference, as a real in-person conference, I'm sure we could have some long conversations about this during a reception. Do we call people customers or users? So that's the last time I'm going to mention that phrase. But if you see me visibly cringe whenever I say users, it's because I'm still getting used to it. Continuing on the topic within this slide, we only license Blackboard Learn. We don't, which is the VLE. We don't have the content system or the community system. So with the community system, you get to add all these extra tabs and portlets. Our Blackboard looks quite empty in comparison to most other institutions because we can't add all of these frilly bits around the sides, and we can't have tabs where we might have extra help and so on right within Blackboard. So we've really been restricted in what we're able to do there. Also, we do tend to disable some features which we think are totally dangerous, like course messages. Course messages is where you can send like internal emails within your Blackboard course, but there's always going to be cases where people miss these messages because they think they only need to check their emails, or they think course messages is all I need to use, so I never need to look at email. We really try to reduce any elements that might cause unnecessary confusion, but we wouldn't want to be directing our users to Blackboard pages that describe how to use features that we haven't enabled, because that would also lead to confusion, and confusion is really our kind of number one enemy. We also want to provide current information about any workarounds, bugs, or if we like to do things in a certain way at Southampton, which is not stated in the documentation provided by the vendors. We also rely on the links not changing. Often I've bookmarked something on the Blackboard web pages, and a few years later I go back to that link and it's dead. I've got to remember how I found it in the first place, because every few years they change things. Whereas if we do ever change our website, then we can put in forwards so that we go from an old page automatically to a new page. And we might also configure Blackboard differently to how it's presented in the help, which is, for example, my saying about course messages or not having the content system. Also, because we have Office 365, we would not enable Google Drive as one of the cloud providers that we could allow people to access from, because if we present something within the corporate VLE, people will assume that we support it at a corporate level. And although I use Google Docs personally and Google Drive in my own outside of work, we can't provide support for that because we don't have that arrangement. We have a deal with Office 365 and OneDrive and so on. So we would, if we had a choice, which currently you don't have with the Blackboard Cloud Storage, if we had a choice, we would just enable OneDrive. But since we don't have a choice, we have that element disabled again to reduce confusion. One particular case study, and this is something that has been really grinding my gears for many years, and if you've been seeing what I say on the support site, you might see that I've mentioned this more than once. Under build content, which the instructor uses to add content into a content area, there is build content and then video. But we have Panopto, So we want people to upload their large videos using Panopto. And for small videos, there's actually an HTML5 video feature in Blackboard, which is so much better than what's used in build content video. And I've mentioned this many times and not really got very far with having it changed. So if you're thinking HTML5 video, I didn't know about that. If you go into build content and then item and then select to insert a video, then you have an option to choose HTML5 video. And by the way, the default in here is Flash. So that's what we would prefer people to use because it will work in pretty much all browsers. Whereas the methodology that's used in build content video is the type where you used to get in Internet Explorer, you used to get an embedded Windows media player or a real media player or QuickTime. This is just from like the dark ages, but we didn't want to turn off this video feature because our users often think that we've hidden all of the good stuff from them and turned it off so they can't use it, which is we only turn things off which would be which really should never have been included in the first place, like course messages, or though I could see course messages was probably added for smaller institutions that don't have their own email, or say who provide distance learning courses but they don't provide email accounts to their learners, and so there was a use case there to have course messages, but we certainly don't have a need to use it in its current implementation anyway within our Blackboard environment. And I've requested many times that the video feature under build content is updated to use the HTML5 method, but so far Blackboard have completely ignored my requests. How can we get people to use the features in the way that we would like them to without turning any features off? 'Cause if we turned off video under here, people say, oh, you've turned stuff off again. I knew you were turning things off and keeping me from using the good stuff. If we're saying, oh, we want you to use Panopto for the large files and HTML5 video for really small video clips, if people don't read our emails or visit our web pages, and believe it or not, there are a happy minority who will ignore as much as possible that we send their way. What can we do? In this next part of the presentation, I'm going to just describe some challenges and frustrations in getting people to get to our support pages from within Blackboard. Let's take a look at different ways that we might try to get people to look at our support pages from within Blackboard. You probably know that in the global navigation menu, that's the little drop down when you click on the number next to your avatar, that when you click on that to display this menu, right at the bottom there is that small help link, and you can configure that in the Blackboard user interface on the admin panel to go to your support site. But how does anyone know that that's there? And how would anyone remember that it was there? I don't think I've ever seen anyone use that icon. Then we've got the login page, where we've got lots of help links. We've got a carousel, which kind of shows kind of adverts of things that we think will be useful to people. And we also have a drop-down menu with lots of useful links, including help and support. We've also got a few help links in the login box, but this is not much use once people have logged in. They're not going to log out just to be able to get to the help. And if they use single sign-on, then they're going to be bypassing the login box anyway. Something else is you have help links in the control panel for staff, but the Blackboard Help for instructors, that goes to Blackboard's own help website. We want to direct users to our own pages. Now, the most commonly used method of adjusting Blackboard to kind of meet your local requirements has been language packs, and this is an example of what the editor looks like. But it is quite cumbersome. You have to maintain edits after each upgrade. So if you upgrade, you've got to open up the new language pack for the new upgraded version and make all of your edits to that. I don't believe that you can add links, and the one time that we tried to use it, that was when Box was introduced after Crocodoc, which I still wake up sweating about, and let's hope that BB Annotate is going to be as good as they say. We had edited some things because, if I remember, when you submitted to Box, it would say, this will be done in like 10 seconds, but it didn't auto refresh, so you could be waiting and nothing would happen. So lots of institutions were editing the language pack to change the little pop-up that told students when they were submitting that they would need to refresh to be able to see their submission. When we tried that, we found whenever our Linux-based locally hosted environment was restarted after updating Java, we sometimes got really strange error messages appearing randomly in courses, whether they were related to Box or not. And as soon as we stopped using a customized language pack, those errors disappeared. So I really shy away from the language packs. Not only are they far too cumbersome to maintain, but also there appears to be issues with stability when you use this. So I'm not using it. Now, there's also, Blackboard has built-in help, but you can turn it off by clicking on that question mark icon. And I also think it's kind of easy to ignore or miss. It's just the kind of bump around where that you kind of ignore because you see a text box and you want to start filling it in. That's the nature of the web, and probably how many people read instructions? Far too few, probably. Also, some of the Blackboard help guides, the grey colour that they're written in is not WCAG AA compliant. Some of it has a contrast ratio of 4.47 to 1. And if you've watched my earlier presentation, A Bluffer's Guide to Blackboard Theme Accessibility, you would know that the minimum level for text in terms of colour contrast is 4.5 to 1. I have reported this to Blackboard, by the way, but I see this is still unchanged in the latest version of Blackboard. So really, I've always been looking for a way to improve the service by reducing interface friction. So I guess removing the things that people say are clunky, which is something we often hear in reference to Blackboard, and also to increase engagement with our internal support resources, and of course to reduce tickets. And hopefully, if we can do this, then the result should be more effective and efficient usage. Blackboard certainly is not cheap, and so the greater the effective and efficient usage of it, the greater the return on our investment. And if people are using it more effectively and more efficiency, maybe they'll have a greater satisfaction with the service. Although I don't want to give the impression that I can give you any feedback on how that has worked for us. A few years ago, we found that to survey our users, we would have to go through a process to take our survey to an ethics panel, and that effectively stopped us ever surveying our users on satisfaction with a service, because the days are busy enough as they are without having to take things to ethics panels. Now, at the same time, we had a few feature requests and other motivations, which, now this is a long story, which is taking me to how I got to this place, but it will all start to make sense. So last year, I was very keen to make our Blackboard environment as compliant as possible with the new web accessibility regulations, and do look at my other presentation, Bluffer's Guide to Blackboard Theme Accessibility, for more on that topic. But I wanted to add the AT bar to Blackboard. That's an assistive technology toolbar which provides things like allows the user to add colour overlays, to use text-to-speech, change the font size without changing the image size, and so on. And it was on most of our websites, but not on Blackboard. I really wanted to get it onto Blackboard. We also had a couple of feature requests. We had our humanities department wanted course copy to be easier to find. It was buried in the packages and utilities section of the control panel, and the overall rollover process to be easier to complete. At Southampton, new modules are created as empty courses, and staff are able to, if they wish, copy last year's course to the new year's course, what we call rollover, using course copy. But because it's something that our staff will tend to do just once or twice a year, it's very easy to forget. So our colleagues in humanities were looking to us to make this process easier. And they also had another question or request, which was about they really did not like the message that staff and students see when no announcements have been posted to a course. It says no announcements found, which kind of sounds like a technical problem. Like, I was looking for announcements, but I didn't find any. That doesn't necessarily mean there aren't any, I just didn't find any. It's kind of what it seems to be saying to me. I'm sure that language would have gone through various focus groups at Blackboard, and it was what was deemed to be right for all English-speaking locations, but we felt that it was not particularly friendly and not particularly clear what it meant, and so we were looking, how can we improve that? And I used this slide in last year's presentation about customizing the theme, and once again I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I really should thank a number of these giants from the Blackboard community. Wiley Fuller and Shane Argo from the University of the Sunshine Coast, Heather Kreitz from Columbus State Community College, Ashley Fisher from Amsterdam University, and of course Esther Munoz from eLearning Media. And it was Esther who gave me some tips on how I might go about looking at adding the AT bar into our Blackboard environment. This is a screenshot showing how I've added it. This is actually our enhanced AT bar, which I'm still not quite yet ready to share with the community, because there's still, although it's been very successful for us so far, there is just one more aspect to it that I would like to tweak and to improve before I release it to the community. But when you fire up the AT bar, you get this extra bar along the top with lots of features that will improve or they will help you if you would like the text to be larger or to have text read out to you, as well as a number of other features like color overlays. These tools are quite appreciated by some of our users, so we really wanted to have those in there. And Esther suggested that I look at a tool called JSHack or JSHack or JavaScript Hack. I tend to call it JSHack because I really don't like the name hack. If we start saying, oh, I added a hack to Blackboard, it does not sound very professional, and it would probably make our change management colleagues quite nervous. So I tend to say JSHack, but if you talk to anyone other than me, they will probably call it JSHack, and I'm sure that I will be iterating between various ways of saying this phrase. But what is JSHack? Well, it was developed by the University of the Sunshine Coast, and it gives administrators the ability to customize the Blackboard Learn using HTML and JavaScript. And it's a dynamic building block which evolves with the Blackboard community, and so that members of the community, people that use Blackboard, or administrators at least, can make small changes to the Blackboard interface. You can put lots of little packages within JSHack, and it makes customizing Blackboard so easy. It actually won a Blackboard Learn Innovative Development Catalyst Award in 2013, I believe. And you can find all of the information about JSHack at this GitHub page, and of course all of the links are on the support website, the web address for which is at the bottom of this presentation. It's developed by Shane Argo and Wiley Fuller, and it is free and open source. And it's compatible with the Learn Original experience on local hosting, Blackboard hosting, or on SaaS. If you're on SaaS, you won't be able to install building blocks yourself. You would need to ask your service delivery manager or Blackboard support to install it for you. And there is a little trick involved in making it work on SaaS, which I cannot tell you myself, but I know that lots of members of the community and the service delivery managers will know about. I can't tell you myself because we're not on SaaS yet, so I haven't worked out what it is, but it's just some little tweak to privileges which allows it to work. But it is not compatible with Ultra or the Ultra base navigation. And I say for now because I have seen that EasySoft has recently become available to use with Ultra and Ultra base nav, and that uses in some ways a similar approach to JSHack. So if it's good enough, or if it's working now for EasySoft, then maybe there'll be a way, particularly if we as a community can say this is something that we would like, then I think that it really ought to be possible to put into Ultra and Ultra base navigation. So I set up our AT bar using JSHack, and I was looking over the support site for JSHack, and I started finding treasure. And they give some examples of various packages that you can upload. And the first one was about availability. Is that something to do with course availability? Because I would love for courses to be possible to make available more easily. And yeah, it was amazing. So this is an example on a vanilla Blackboard 2016 theme, completely uncustomized, apart from JSHack has been installed and the availability notice package has been uploaded. As you can see, when a course is unavailable, there's this yellow box which says this unit is currently unavailable, and a button that will allow you to change the unit availability. And it appears on all unavailable courses, although you can close it if it's in your way. And when you select or click on that button, it directly takes you to the page from course properties, like course customization, course properties, and it will scroll you down to set availability. So actually it takes you all the way down to the page automatically, the section of the page, and this little text with an arrow says this is where you need to go. And I thought, wow, amazing. This is going to really help us, because course unavailable is still such a high cause for tickets. So that's around 300 in 2019. 300 people whose reason for calling service line was something related to the course being unavailable when it shouldn't have been. Now you know that Blackboard have added extra things to try and make it more obvious to people that their course is not available to students. And most recently they've added this little padlock which appears when a course is unavailable. But that still only appears on some Blackboard pages, and it doesn't appear on the announcements page. And the announcements page is our default course entry point. So that is the place where we need it to be most. And this padlock has been on within the Blackboard interface for maybe 3 years or more by now, and it still isn't on the announcements page. So, calm down for a moment. I had some inspiration. I changed the language because the format was just HTML. So I'm no wizard with HTML, but like I think most people who work in IT or who have worked with computers for some time, I know the basics to make a very simple web page. And for those who don't, it is very straightforward to learn. And later on, when I'm showing you how you can do this yourself, I'll be teaching you a few bits as well. So I changed the language because Blackboard calls them courses. We tend to call them courses as well, although as an institution we call them modules rather than units. But within Blackboard, the lingua franca is to call them a course. And I also added, because there was this bit of empty space, I added some links to help guides on our support site, which would be useful at the kind of time of year when courses are likely to be left unavailable, like just when things are about to begin. It's normally the last thing that people would want to do before they're ready to go, is to make their course available. So I added in links for how to do the rollover, our top tips page, and how they could change the look and feel of their course. Because these are the sorts of things that should cover like the top things that people would want to know at the start of the academic year when they're looking to get their course ready. And getting their course ready, part of that is making it available. So let's have a look at how that works in our environment. So I have an animated GIF playing here. I've clicked on the button. This isn't me scrolling. This is the page automatically scrolls, tells me where to click. I edited that text as well. Click on to submit and it's done. Amazing. I was thinking, well, these yellow boxes, and I'm calling them yellow boxes because they're boxes and they're yellow, because we're not particularly imaginative sometimes, are we, in IT? Can I put more of these yellow boxes within Blackboard? Because if I could, then they could provide direct links to our support pages with perhaps some extra relevant information. Still thinking about that create video under build content, that they could actually be within the Blackboard feature so that people could see the help message right where and when it is relevant. And that's what I did. So let's have a look at a few. So here I've added one into announcements. So this is an instructor. Of course, most of our queries come from staff, more than 70%. So that's where the emphasis is on providing them with the extra help, although we do provide some for students as well. So in this example, I explain a bit about announcements, also mentioning that it's the default entry point. Try to change the language to be as clear, not necessarily friendly, but just straightforward. Try to make the language as straightforward as I could, while also maintaining the detail. And for example, people often get confused about what's the differences with the emails that announcements make. How does that all work? So I've added some information in there, and then at the end I've added a link to our dedicated page about the announcement feature. As I went thinking, well, where do we kind of get more questions, then I started adding more yellow boxes. I added them pretty much everywhere that I could. So here with the content areas, I'm explaining what build content does, assessments and tools, and so on. And finally, under create video, I was able to put up a message. This time I've used a red border because it's a bit more important, explaining that if it's larger than 20 megabytes, you should use Panopto. If it's smaller than 20, use the HTML audio video feature. To give you some more examples, here's one for the discussion board. And of course, this being a European teaching and learning conference, although my native language is English, there's nothing stopping you from using any language you wish. I'll just give you a few European examples. So here we have an example in German. This is nothing to do with language packs. This is just changing the language in the JSHack package that I created. Here is an example, that same one, in Spanish. And special thanks to Esther Munoz from eLearning Media for providing that translation. And here is an example in Polish. And thanks especially to Marek from Blackboard for providing me with that translation. So hopefully you're thinking, this looks cool, but how difficult is it? I would say not difficult at all. You only need to know or be able to copy a little bit of HTML. And I'm going to be providing you with templates and explanations in this video and on the support site. What you do need is a little patience and imagination. I could also see that this would be a great kind of piece of project work for, say, an intern or for someone who was new to a e-learning support team, because doing this will make you more familiar with your own support materials as well as Blackboard features. In terms of how you can do it yourself, really is going to be easy, I hope, and you can refer back to this video. I hope that this video will prove useful not only for the few days that the conference is running in everyone's minds, but for hopefully for years to come maybe. And what you need to have ready is JSHack installed. If you're on SAS, your SDM can help you with that. You'll need a text editor such as Notepad++, the support site for this presentation, and of course a test environment, because we should always test before implementing in production. I'm now going to take you on a kind of a step-by-step through making an extra help box, and I'm trying to call them, for the purposes of this presentation, extra help boxes, but I might also call them yellow boxes, because that was how we called them internally when we were coming up with them, because they were boxes and they were yellow. So we start in the admin panel. So you would need to have administrator access, or to know someone who does, and go into the tools and utilities area, within which is a link called Manage JavaScript Hacks. This is what the main page looks like. You can create new hacks, you can upload hack packages, which are zip files, and on the conference presentation support site, the link for which is at the bottom of this page, I've included a large number, I couldn't tell you how many, but almost 20 or more of these packages that you can upload and experiment with yourself. And there is one important button, suspend injection, and if anything goes particularly wrong, have this page bookmarked so you can easily get to it, and then you can click on suspend injection, and that just stops your packages from working. So you've always got a kind of a escape if something goes wrong. So how do we actually build a JavaScript hack? And yes, I did email Shane and Wiley and suggesting maybe hack wasn't the greatest word for this tool, but they said it's too late now. That's how it is. So click on create hack, and then in typical Blackboard kind of very familiar form, where we are completing a form. So we're entering some details here. Here is an example. There is an identifier, and once you've saved this, it's fixed within this package. The only way of changing it is to create a new hack and copying the details into it. So a bit like a course ID, make sure that your identifier kind of is short and sweet and will make sense to you. So in this case, it's about discussion help. P is the kind of code for instructors if you ever did a batch enroll, and I think that's also in the database. It's P. I think it stands for professor. And then help, because it's a help message. Then you fill in a few names, like your own names, the developer information. So far, so good. Now next, you create what they call the snippet. And because it was designed for doing fancy things with JavaScript, it looks a bit intimidating. There's, if you don't know JavaScript, and I'm only learning JavaScript myself, that will look very intimidating. But you can actually wipe all of that. It makes it look more complicated than it needs to be, because you can just put in a bit of HTML. It doesn't have to be JavaScript. The text box cannot be resized, so it's more convenient to craft your snippet, as it's called here, in Notepad++ or another text editor, and then paste it back in to the box on this page. So here is an example. I'm going to take you through step by step how this yellow box has been made. And we start with a new paragraph, a P tag, and that has an ID. So the ID is saying this is called YB help, this paragraph. That means yellow box help, because I did say about not having that much imagination. And that will allow us to apply the styling to this area later. And I'll tell you about the styling in a little bit. And next we have the closing P tag. So everything is within this kind of paragraph. And I'm sure if you ever tried making a web page, you've probably seen this P beginning and end tag. And there are kind of greater than, less than symbols around these elements within the HTML. And when we close a tag at the end of this paragraph, you can see there is a /, which is closing that tag. Next we have the reference to the image. I'll be explaining what resource path means in a few slides ahead, but we also have the alt text, that the image is aligned to the right, and just the height is 60. So I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment, but this puts in that little image. And by the way, I got that image from Blackboard itself. The image which I refer to shortly actually comes from as an example image within Blackboard slide deck for their conferences, which is a real treasure trove of free icons that we can use, and so I just repurposed it to use in my yellow boxes. Next we have the heading. Now I haven't used a heading tag. I suppose I could do, but I just stuck with simple making it bold. Now I believe, strictly speaking, we should be using strong for now, but I don't think anyone's going to tell me off for using bold. I also thought that it makes it seem a bit more straightforward if you learnt a bit of HTML back in the day and you haven't looked at it for some time since. Following on from that are 2 line breaks. That's the BR with a space and then a /, so that's just 2 lines, like I pressed return twice. Then I have the main content. So that's where I've got a review our guide and then a link which will open in a new tab, because it's target = blank. The link has a title, so when I hover my mouse over that link, the title appears as kind of a tooltip, and then the actual text that makes up the link, how to set up a Blackboard discussion board. So what we had were 4 parts. The opening P with an identifier, YB help, which was closed at the end, the image, the heading, and the content. So now I'm going to show you how that looks with the real yellow box. So as a reminder, everything is in the paragraph tag. So the whole box is within effectively that P tag. And the ID, YB help, that allows us to apply the styling easily. More about which soon. The image appears at the top right because I've got that align right. In terms of the sizing, I'm just restricting it to 60 pixels high. Just because when I fiddled around, that's how it kind of worked out. I don't have a width, because if I just have the height, it will sort out the width itself automatically, which is pretty cool. Then we've got the heading. So that was that need help with discussion boards in bold, and then 2 line breaks or carriage returns after that. So 1 to make the next line, 1 to go 1 further line down. And then the main content. So you can see that review our guide how to set up Blackboard discussion board, and there you can see the link is in blue, and if we were to click on it, it would open up a page on our e-learning support site in a new window. So that's just the main content that makes up that yellow box. So just think back, we just had a bit of HTML, and that was as complicated as it got, at least so far. The next part of the form is where we have to do something which is called setting the injection point. And with your JSHack, you can have it being loaded in different elements within the page, within the Blackboard page. And the one for this purpose that we're using is the learning system page. And the learning system page is that white container in which the bulk of your kind of content is loaded. That's what's called the learning system page, and that's why that yellow box appears there. We're not doing any other positioning which states where the box should appear. We're just saying it's going to be loaded up on the learning system page. Next, we can set a priority, an injection priority, and for most purposes you do not need to consider this. Furthermore, we can add resources, and this is where we've loaded our image. It's called help.png, and it has a MIME type, image/png, and there's a resource path stated. So when you upload a file, it explains to you what the resource path will be. So let's see how that works. So the graphic was called help.png, and by the way, I have that graphic on the support site, so you could use it as well if you wanted to. We have to set the MIME type, and for PNG files, it is image/png. The reason we have to set it is so that it will load correctly. You don't really need to know what MIME types are, you just need to know what to type into that box. And I've included within this presentation and on the support site a list of common MIME types. And the file reference tells us the path to that image so that we can declare it in the snippet. And what do I mean by that? I mean what we see here. You can see that the image source is, and this is where we'd normally say where that image can be found, and then we just paste in what we got from the example file reference. So that was $, squiggly bracket, resource, uppercase P for path, squiggly bracket closing, / help.png. We've added to this package, and that way it will know where to look. We could also reference files elsewhere on Blackboard on a different server, but then you might get security issues, so it's better to, if possible, include, if it's a particular picture or something quite small, to include it within your hack package. Next we have restrictions. Now this is the only part which takes a little bit of work to understand. So you can have lots of different types of restrictions, but for this one we're saying that the URL is, and then you could probably see that there's links there. If you use Blackboard, it might look a bit familiar. These are bits of the Blackboard links that you see in the address bar and in another spot I'll be telling you about in a moment. And so we're saying we only want this yellow box to appear when we're using this feature. And the way that we know that we can say which feature to use it in is by using a URL restriction. I'll be telling you much more about that momentarily. And also, because this yellow box is aimed at staff, we're saying that the course role should be P for instructor or professor, G for grader, which is also marker, T for teaching assistant, and B for course builder. And where we have multiple elements that we'd like to use as a restriction, we can put a pipe character in between them. That on most keyboards is next to the shift key on the left hand side, and we put brackets, normal brackets at either end. But what types of restriction are available? Well, there's also entitlements. Now, if you use REST, then you often have to create a user with certain entitlements, which you then make as the user that a certain REST API integration will be acting as. It's a bit like that. You can also use an advanced expression. I'll be telling you one great example of that in a moment. Then you've got course role, which is like your instructor, teaching assistant, and so on. You have the system role. That's the system, could be like system administrator, if it was something for the sysadmin only. An institution role, if you use the community, some of those things, you've got institution roles. Course availability, is the course available or not? Request parameter, that's where you can be passing something from one hack package to another. And a course node ID, I'm not actually sure what that is, but it is not the course ID. The course ID, I'll be showing you a different way of using that as a restriction. For the help boxes, I've mainly used just the URL and the course role. And the URL is, as I said earlier, that's which feature of Blackboard this yellow box should appear in. And the course role is for which course role the help should appear. So should it be for a student and instructor? If I don't restrict by course role, then it will appear to any user who gets to the page which I've specified for my URL restriction. Now I'm going to explain about URL restrictions. It's about configuring within which Blackboard feature our extra help box is going to appear. It can take a little patience and perseverance to work these out, but I'm going to make this much easier for you. I'm sharing all of the URL restrictions that I have worked out so far, and I'm putting them into a shared Google Sheet so that anyone can refer to them, and hopefully the community can add their own so that we can grow it. And I'm also going to show you how to work them out for yourself. I think I've got around 20 or so that I've worked out so far, and these are for areas that were more important to me to build extra help boxes. And I've got a bit.ly link there to take you to it. It is also on the support website. And the process of working out the URL restrictions and making your own is these 5 steps. I would recommend reading the JSHack wiki, which explains the process perhaps better than I will explain it here. Also, you will need to install a package called display URL. This is a JavaScript hack package, a JSHack package, available for free on the JSHack wiki. It takes 2 seconds really to install it, and you only need to do this on a dev environment. Then you will navigate to the feature that you want to have a help box display within, and copy the URL down, say into Notepad. And then open the source of your Blackboard page. So in your browser, right click on a bit of empty space and choose View Source, which is what it will normally say, and then search for the words display URL, and then it will provide, when you reach down to that part using find, it will give you another URL that you need to paste into Notepad. So I'm going to take you through bit by bit, and this is for one that I did myself actually just recently. I wanted to add a yellow box within the tests area. So first of all, navigate to the feature you want to use and copy the URL and put it into Notepad, and then view source, search for display URL, and it will then show you a URL which might be different from what you got in when you copied it from the address bar. So then you've got 2. You've got the URL from the browser, that's on the left, and the URL from display URL. With the URL from the browser, in this example, I've already removed blackboard.sutton.ac.uk. If there's a question mark, so for example, looking at the left, the first URL, on the second line of that example, there's question mark, assessment type equals test, and course ID equals, and then a set of numbers. You want to remove everything after the question mark, including the question mark, and then you reach the point that you see on the second line, and it ends with View Assessment Manager. So then identify the last / and remove everything before it, including that /. So you've got View Assessment Manager. Now on the right, we've got what we got from display URL is actually the same. We have View Assessment Manager. So in this case, they are the same, and we would use that as our URL restriction. There's a few more bits to do it, but why should you check both? Because sometimes they are different. Sometimes you get a .jsp page. If you get a .jsp page, then having done that first step where we removed everything up to the last / I just kept the last bit, when we have .jsp at the end, we need to add a / just before the dot. This is kind of creating a regular expression, and there is on the JSHack's wiki, there's a lot more about this. But in this case, they're both the same. So what do we do with what we've got here? Well, we add a * to the beginning and a star to the end. So for this example, we have * View Assessment Manager star, or you might call that an asterisk rather than a star. And then we paste that into the URL restriction, and our hack will apply when we use that feature. What if we want something to apply to multiple pages or features? Then put a pipe between each one, keep it within brackets. So as an example, so I wanted this to apply for View Assessment Manager and also Modify Assessment, which are two areas that you often see when you're using tests. So I have an opening bracket, * View Assessment Manager, and then a pipe character, and then * Modify Assessment star, and then a closing bracket, and that's your URL restriction. Now, one of the reasons why I'm sharing with you almost all of the packages that I have created is on the presentation support site, is that you can upload these onto your dev environment onto which you've installed JSHack, and you can then have a play and see what I've done, and that will hopefully give you the confidence to give this a try. This aspect is the most complicated part, I would say, and I wasn't really sure how best to describe this in the simplest way, but I'm hoping that through these explanations, through being able to look back on the video and to be able to view the slides as well, and the fantastic JSHack wiki, that you'll be able to get going with this and you shouldn't find it too hard. As another example with the course role, and I mentioned before that we also have these in brackets with the pipes separating them. These are what the different roles are. If you've used a batch-in role, you will have used these characters as well. And like I said, put them in within brackets and separate with pipes if you use more than one role. Once you've done all that, you've completed the form, then you just save it. When you save it, it will be disabled by default. So you then need to find the package that you created and then enable it. Note there that you also have options to download the hack package. So if you make something cool, please do share it, because I'm still learning and I'm really quite excited about the potential of this tool. And toward the end of the presentation, I'll show you some other uses that are really good of JSHack. There we are. It has appeared within our area when we're looking to create tests. So that's another little helpful yellow box that will take our users direct to our local support site. In terms of what types of restriction are available, I mentioned advanced expressions, and something, if If you saw my presentation about Blackboard accessibility and ensuring accessibility of your customized theme, you might have seen I showed a way that you could apply certain CSS just to certain courses. Well, this is how I did it. I was using JSHack with an advanced expression, and you just have to paste in context.course.courseID and then equals, and then pretty much whatever is the letters, so in this case arch, you can effectively ignore the rest of it. I think the circumflex means at the beginning is arch, and then with anything else at the end of it. And effectively what this is going to do is any course ID beginning with arch, whatever JSHack I was creating, this package, whatever I was creating, it would apply only to these courses that had arch at the beginning of their course ID. But I could also be more specific. I could include specific course IDs. And as an example, for a certain number of medicine courses, I had to apply a certain bit of extra styling, so it's just how they liked it. And this is a real line from an example that I had made. When you separate more than one, you have to use two pipes, just because. I don't know why, but just because. So now you know. And there's much more information on the Orthodox JSHack wiki. Orthodox is the name of the kind of company that Shane and Wiley are kind of running as consultants. And thanks in particular to Shane Algo, who I'd asked how it would be possible to do this, and he gave me some examples which put me in the right direction. So big thanks to Shane for his extra support. Now, I've already provided the sample image and some sample packages. Just to try to make it easy for you as well, I provided this sample snippet, which is just a kind of reducted version where I've got need help with blank, review our guide, put your link in here, and type in the name of your guide. So if you're really not sure, you can just paste that in and fill in the bits, follow the rest of the guide. You would need to attach that help.png, which is also included on the support site. And throughout the rest of this presentation, I'll be adding links to or references of what they are called on the support site, so you can quickly grab them and find them. And again, by support site, I mean the link which is listed at the bottom of every slide on this presentation. But that dealt with the content, but you might be thinking, well, Matt, I don't see what made these boxes yellow. And I'm going to be talking now about the styling. So for efficiency, we do the styling separately. This is a fairly new development that I had when I was thinking. I think we made maybe 20-25 of these yellow boxes, and every time I wanted to make a change to how they looked, I'd have to change each one individually. And I thought, actually, but based on what I've learned about custom style sheets or cascading style sheets from doing the Blackboard theme, I can apply that knowledge here. And I'm sharing it with you now because I think this is the better way to do it if I were starting from scratch. So, as an example, if you download and install a file from the support site called CSS BBH for Blackboard Help or Better Blackboard Help, YB yellowbox.zip, download it, install it into your dev Blackboard site in JSHack, and then enable it. And what I have, this is how it looks from the outside, but I'll just look at this bit by bit. First, it's loading a custom style sheet on any page, so there's no URL restrictions, and you can see there I've got a link and that I'm loading up some CSS. It's a file called yb.css, which is within the resource path of this hack package because it's attached to it. And here it is attached to it. So that's the file yb.css. The MIME type is text/css. The injection point, by the way, is the top frame, just so it's loading all the time. It probably could be learning system, but I only just went with top frame So for no particular reason, but it works like this for sure. Now in terms of the concept, you have your CSS hack, and then that applies the styling. The styling is YB help, which was the identifier of the paragraph within which the yellow box appears, and that will, with that one piece of CSS, it applies to all of our help packages. And if we make a lot, then it's going to be a real benefit, because if we ever want to make a change, we just change the CSS in our CSS hack, and then all of the help packages, the help boxes, will be updated at once. Now, what does that CSS look like? It's pretty straightforward, and I'm going to explain to you line by line what all of these elements are doing. By all means, take a look at my Bluffer's Guide to Blackboard Theme Customization, where I've got lots of help about using CSS and learning it, including a number of tools such as Stylus and Inspect Element, which I recommend learning a bit and practicing with as well. But just to get you going, I'm going to explain what these elements do, starting with just the element or section called YB help. So first of all, border radius. That means that the border is square, it's not rounded. If we wanted to be rounded, we'd make this any number higher than 0, and the higher the number, the more rounded the corner will be. Next we have a little bit of margin. So that is saying that around the box there will be a bit of extra space, just 5 pixels of space, and that's outside of the box. Then we've got the background, and this is the HTML colour for that kind of custard yellow. I kind of went with this yellow colour originally because I felt it just seemed a bit more friendly. It did make it look a little bit old-fashioned, like 90s, but bearing in mind most of our users who present issues are staff, I really wanted to make it as friendly as possible, so that's why I went with the yellow originally and why we're calling them yellow boxes. The padding is a little bit of space around the edge of the box, and this is on the inside. That just stops the text being a bit too tight against the box, and just makes it just look maybe a little bit more professional, or just a little bit clearer, more easy to see. The border is 3 pixels wide, and it's solid and it's grey. Font size, I've put in 100%. Later on I'll be showing you a variation on how to set the font size. The margin bottom that just means that there'll be a little extra margin below the box. So for example, where you might have some content appearing within Blackboard and the yellow boxes above it, that stops that content really being snug up to the box. It just adds just a little bit of space, makes it look a bit nicer in my opinion. Next we've got a bit of CSS that governs how the links look when you hover or focus on them. This applies for both hover and focus. Whatever colour scheme I choose to use elsewhere for this yellow box, if I want it to be a red box or a black box, I don't need to consider what the hover or focus colour will be, because it will always have a black background with white text, which is always going to be clear, no matter what else you are doing with your theming for the yellow boxes. So the colour was white, and then we have the underlining, which I like to do. Then the background colour being black, and of course I had the transition, and then the outline, that there isn't an extra outline here. If I had, it would be kind of a box somewhat like that. One of the reasons why we will do the CSS separately for our yellow boxes is maybe we don't want them to be yellow. Perhaps when, as time passes, people will start ignoring them. So how do we make sure we catch the eye? So what I'm thinking of doing is like every 6 months just changing the styling a bit, so that again it becomes refreshed and more noticeable. Just going to show you a few examples that I've thrown together and the styling. So let's take a look in detail. So first of all, we've got the image. Now it was originally black lines and I've changed it to white, but I didn't even have to add a new image. There's a bit of CSS I can use which will invert the colour of the image, so to change from black to white or white to black. Because this was a transparent PNG file, this is all I need. So I think that's really a cool way of doing it. Also, what I've done is I set the text to be white and the background to be black. I also set the border, and there I'm using it with a kind of purple colour. Again, this one is from our brand. Also highlighted there the font size, but it's commented out. Rather than using a percentage, we probably ought to say 1.1 or 1.2 REM. And if you were to Google CSS font size REM, you should find lots of pages explaining why this is probably the best way to do your font sizes. It's a bit out of the scope of this presentation. I also changed the colour of the link because I wanted it to have sufficient contrast, so I used a well contrasting colour, again from our institutional colour scheme. And link, just like in the HTML, I had a href equals. In the CSS, I'm saying that within my YB help box, which I declared with a P tag, paragraph tag, where links that an A appears within it, make the colour of that link, that A, that particular kind of yellowy golden colour. Here's another one. This one I've actually decided to start using now. I liked it so much. And this is the full CSS, but again, we can just chop out the elements regarding the hover and focus of the link, because as I said earlier, with it being black background with white text, it will always be clear no matter what colour scheme I use. What you should see is I changed the background to white. It's no longer a yellow box, it's a white box. Furthermore, I changed the border, so the border is green. This green is called shamrock in our institutional colour scheme, but I've kept the rest the same. The font size, I've just left that there, but it's commented out. I might consider, if people aren't paying enough attention to it, to increasing the font size, and that's what I would set it to if I did. The colour of the text is black. And finally, can you see that there's a bit of shadow underneath? The CSS adds box shadow, as you can see there. It's in there on 3 lines because, kind of more for historical reasons, that the way of doing box shadow in CSS slightly different depending on which browser. I'm not really sure that we need to include all of these 3 lines these days, but who knows who's still using older browsers, so let's try and keep it compatible. One final example, this time it's a purple box with rounded corners. So this is the CSS, and again I'm going to chop out my hover and focus and just show you a few bits. So it's got a purple background, so there's my background setting, and the image is white again. So as you can see, I inverted it with the CSS. The corners are rounded, so here you can see now this is one way of doing it. We could just have said border radius 20px, but this is the most kind of super compatible way of doing it, although some of this is probably a bit old-fashioned now. But if you use a website to calculate border radiuses for you, as I did here, it just gives it to you all anyway. I think it's called CSS-O-Matic, the site that I used to generate this. Finally, we have no border. So I found that I actually had to set the border to be 0 pixels, no border is shown. I could also have set a border and made it the same colour as the background. And the colour of the text is white, and the colour of the links is this blue colour. If you're thinking, actually, is that particularly accessible? It doesn't look that clear. Well, I was referring to, and I would recommend if you start looking at this yourself, I was using our accessibility matrix of our university brand colour palette, and since I made this matrix I use it not necessarily every day, but quite often to make sure that where I'm choosing colours, that they're both on brand, they're using the university's institutional colour scheme, as well as being accessible, so having the right amount of colour contrast. Going back to some feature requests, here are some other uses that we made. Do you remember that our humanities site said, we'd like course copy to be easier? Well, we found we could use JSHack for that as well. And big thanks to Heather Kreitz from the Blackboard community site, who gave us some code. I tried doing this first of all with CSS, but Heather said, you could use JSHack to do this, and gave us some code. And that way, you can see within the control panel, just below files, we've added a new link called rollover, and then in brackets course copy, because people know it as rollover. And that will take them direct to that feature. We also added a link to the open photo roster, which is a great building block that provides photos of your staff and students. And that was kind of also hidden away within course tools. So we made that easier to find as well, using the same method. And we also made rollover more easy for people by adding a yellow box that not only explained the process, and which of course we've still got that rollover item in our control panel, but it made it easier by having a box or a button, and when you tap that button it will pre-select all of the recommended tick boxes that we recommend our users use when they use the course copy, because most people, they just want to copy everything over from last year to this year. And this work was actually based on a presentation by Brian Almanza, who is at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and that was at the Kansas Blackboard User Group, KBUG. If you're on the community site, you probably would have noticed there's lots of user groups. My top tip is to join all of the user groups, because they often leave their areas open, and then when they have meetings or give presentations, the really good ones, like the Kansas Blackboard User Group, they will leave the collaborate links to watch the presentation and any files. And I happened to come across Brian's presentation, which was about using JSHack or JSHacks, and he had an example of assisting with rollover, which we then adapted, and our adaptation is on the support site, so you can check it out if you are interested. On a similar topic, rollover is about, or course copy is about copying everything from one course to another. We sometimes will want to do is copy an individual piece of content or move it from one course to another. So we click on the action button beside it and choose either copy or move. And we have to state which course we want it to appear in. And this list of courses is not shown in order, which is incredibly maddening. Why on earth would you make people struggle line by line to find their course and not have an ordered list? When I contacted Blackboard, they said, they can't make this in alphabetical order because it would cause performance issues. But once again, Heather Kreitz to the rescue. She provided a package we could upload into JSHack, which does the ordering within the browser, so it doesn't impact server performance, and in my experience it doesn't have any impact on your performance of your browser. And the package that will do that is added on our support site. And we also had a request, which I mentioned earlier, about making the announcements message better. And what I mean by that is how students would see the top box there, no announcements found. Staff would see the same text but in bold, larger and not italic. And we had a feature request to have that changed because no announcements found seemed quite unfriendly. Announcements was the first area, our default entry point for our courses, and our humanities colleagues asked, if we could change that. And so using JSHack, not language pack, which we'd have to update with every upgrade, using JSHack, we have a different message for staff and students. The message for staff explains why announcements are useful and what you might do. And also, as a reminder, it says that students don't see that message because staff are often a bit nervous about, well, what do the students see? And what the students see is this message. When the teaching team has news or announcements to share with you, they'll appear here, which I think is much more friendly than no announcements found. Something else we did is I added a floating help box for students. That's there if you didn't spot it. Just a very small box, just floats at the bottom right corner. It's fixed, and it will take students to our help pages and how they can report an issue. Sometimes students just don't quite know where to get help despite our best intentions, and so I felt that having that small floating box there, which you can click on to the little X to close it, it just adds a little bit extra guidance. And also more useful, when you go to click on report an issue, it takes to a page on our eLearn site which describes what information we ideally need to know when a student reports an issue, like what's the course name, the course ID, what browser they were using, that kind of thing. And you can download that on our support site. We recently, thanks to COVID-19, introduced Blackboard Collaborate ahead of schedule, and I wanted to have a floating box with some extra help information because this is something brand new that we added to all courses. So this animation shows what I added. I added a little bit of animation. It just slides in from right to left, and it will then just show some extra help information for Collaborate. Also, at the beginning when we implemented it and it was new, I just had that thing saying, this is new. Just so sometimes people are like, oh, was this always there? I didn't know. So I felt it was also useful to say that. One extra package, which is so useful you would not believe, is one that will make the course menu return automatically. Now, you might well have seen, this is on the 2016 theme. You resize your browser and the course menu is still collapsed. I have to use the puller to bring it back. We did improve the puller, but this hack provided by Ashley Fisher from Amsterdam University is so much better. So as you can see, I'm resizing the browser. Note I've also got a responsive banner. That's a bit of extra CSS we added in our theme. But now that I've fully resized the browser, the menu comes back straight away. We used to get so many tickets from people saying, I don't have a course menu. And it was so incredibly frustrating. As you can see, and now that the animation is repeating, it's not exactly jumping out at you that you have to click on that button to bring back the menu. We had a lot of students in particular getting very confused by that, but sometimes staff as well. And so having the course menu pop back automatically as the browser is resized is worth its weight in gold, to be honest. And thank you ever so much to Ashley Fisher, who has provided that. So, what was the impact that this had? What result did we get from adding all these yellow boxes, particularly when we think of the start of a semester 1, so from Freshers Week to the first for week 4, say, of the start of term. So the orange line is for 2019 compared with the blue line for 2018, and you can see the usage, the total number of page views in that period was so much higher, a 72% increase. We did also promote eLearn quite a bit in other areas as well, so I can't say that that whole increase was down to yellow boxes, but Google Analytics allows us to identify what's called the referrer. So the referrers, so we can tell when someone clicked on a link in Blackboard and arrived at eLearn, Google Analytics tells us that they followed a link from Blackboard, and that's our Blackboard, not someone else's Blackboard. As this graph shows, we had a massive increase in referrals from Blackboard.Sotten to eLearn, a almost 2,000% increase, and that is pretty phenomenal. However, I should also say that we did have an extra alert box that arrived when Internet Explorer users started using Blackboard, telling them that their browser was no longer compatible. So some of that will be confused Internet Explorer users clicking on the button to find out more. And yes, we used JSHack to do that as well. Furthermore, we had a 60% reduction in my courses not available queries when we compared October 2018 with October 2019. So I think that is really a testament to the impact of that brilliant example that Shane and Wiley provided as a kind of starter for JSHack, making that freely available to us on their wiki. And it's ever so high thanks to them for that, because not only has it made it easier for our staff, finally, that making their courses available without too much prompting, but also it gave me the inspiration to create more yellow boxes. So in conclusion, from my agenda, have I covered everything I said I was going to cover? So I went through the background, how I made better Blackboard Help, how I got there. Hopefully you will feel ready to have a go at it too. I showed you some other benefits of using JSHack and what the impact was, that almost 2,000% increase in referrals. It is easy, and I've got the materials on the support website. You can refer back to this presentation. It is very quick to do. Once you've done one, the only thing that's really going to slow you down is working out the URL restrictions. I have to say that sometimes I have not been able to identify a URL restriction. So I really hope that some others in the community will add their URL restrictions that they found to my shared spreadsheet. And the long-term prospect is unknown, because currently it does not work JSHack with Ultra or Ultra-based navigation. But it is really a tiny investment, I believe. You could probably get, if you imagine the 10 features that people have difficulty with, I would say you probably would take, say, half a day to get to grips with it, and then working out a URL restriction and kind of tidying up and making it nice. For me, kind of while I'm being interrupted by emails and phone calls, it takes me about an hour to do one. So I would say within like a couple of days, say 3 days tops, you could have yellow boxes or better Blackboard Help boxes within the 20 areas that you get tickets about most highly in terms of your users of Blackboard. And because I've shared that with the community, not only the packages I've already made and some from other people, but also that spreadsheet for capturing URL restrictions, I hope that the community will help me to grow this. In terms of next steps, like what I'm thinking might be good to look at next, I don't have fantastic tracking of that. You get things from Google Analytics. You could add extra tracking with some fancy JavaScript, say. That's a little bit out of my skill set right now. Also, I'm not too, personally, I'm not too keen on tracking users unnecessarily. But I'm sure it would be the first thing lots of people would be asking about. How many people clicked on this one? How many people clicked on that one? And did they raise less tickets or more tickets later on? That kind of thing. You could also, using course IDs, institution roles, that kind of thing, you could start doing A/B testing, where one proportion of users gets a message crafted in one way, and a different proportion gets a different message. And then if you're adding tracking or other measurements, you could try to work out which worked better. Personally, I think that's going a bit too far, but it was an idea that popped into my mind. maybe we'll have a community of treasure hunters searching for the treasure in those URL restrictions, or perhaps something else. You tell me. And I hope that you've enjoyed going through finding out how to add better Blackboard help. Thanks again to Shane Argo for creating JSHack, Chris Boone, who provided me with lots of feedback on my proposals to the TLC, Heather Kreitz on the community site, who is a wealth of knowledge and has been so helpful in providing example JSHack packages for me. I owe Heather many beers, I would say. Hervé provided a lot of help and support for our presentations at the TLC and has been great at creating polls quickly when I've been doing the live sessions. Ashley Fisher at Amsterdam really worked very hard on helping me to create the JSHack package, which changed the announcement text along with Heather. That was a team effort of the two of them that I owe them many beers for. Wiley Fuller he also created JSHack along with Shane Argo. Andy Holohan from Blackboard, much appreciation for his help getting the TLC online going and patiently answering my questions along with Hervé. And Esther Munoz, who tipped me off about using JSHack in the first place. Another person to whom, if we were having a face-to-face live conference, I'd probably be leaving with an empty wallet, because I definitely owe her a few beers too. Thank you very much for taking the time to follow through this rather long presentation. The benefit of giving this presentation online is that I could really put in as much time as I thought was necessary to be able to give you the full benefit, not only saying, hey, I did this cool thing and it was great, but showing you how you can do it yourself. And I really hope that you will have a go yourself. One final thought is that this is the last presentation that I had for the TLC. What I will need to do next is a short version, which I'll kind of do as a trailer for the live event on the Thursday. If I knew that I would be making these presentations in video form and then also doing a short version online, I probably would not have made two proposals in the first place, because it has been quite a bit of work to put these together. Also, I should say that it has been quite a lesson in at least trying to remember to look at the webcam when I'm presenting. It really is quite different from being in a room with people, and it's been quite a learning experience for me. I hope that you found it useful. I'm really looking forward to catching up with everyone once we're finally able to see people for a real at a real TLC, hopefully in Amsterdam next year. Take care.